I wanted to start by saying thank you for listening, as well as for those of you who've been supporting Standard H by way of making purchases on the website. It's funny, I've had several people ask me if I'm a podcast that makes clothes or a clothing brand with a podcast. Though it is most certainly the latter, I'm just happy those of you who have discovered the brand at all, let alone enjoyed the products I make. If you don't mind leaving a review of the show through whatever app you're listening to this on, it will no doubt help others also discover the show and in turn the brand. And if I could ask a second favor, maybe tell a friend or two about Standard H. I couldn't be more proud of the community that's evolving, and all of you have been so great, be it through DMs on Instagram or the emails I've received. I'm a huge subscriber of the birds of a feather mentality and feel the best way to share a good thing is to include my friends. So if you could help share the pod, that would be awesome, and hopefully your friends will enjoy it as well. As always, thank you so much for the support. If you haven't heard episode 1 of the Standard H podcast, then let me tell you about my friend Tim Jackson. As owner of Passion Fine Jewelry, Tim and his team specialize in fine jewelry as well as some of the finest independent watch brands available. I'm talking about Groenfeld, Habring, Kudoki, Roger Smith, Roman Gauthier, Sarpaneva, the list goes on. The staff at Passion Fine Jewelry is literally made up of friends and family, so you will feel right at home if and when you visit. If California is out of reach, you can absolutely email or call the shop and they'll get you sorted. Visit passionfinejewelry.com for more information. As you all know, I'm a huge fan of using the right product for the right job, and like many of you, I appreciate products with a story. That's why I drive a Volkswagen GTI. It's a hot hatch with heritage. It's also why I'm into specific watches like my Tudor Black Bay. And that's exactly why I'm a fan of the indie accessory brand Cantonment. Cantonment makes a utilitarian cloth they simply call a kerchief. It's smaller than a standard bandana, but larger than a handkerchief, which makes it ideal to tuck in a back pocket or use as a neckerchief. I always take one on a bike ride or have one with me as a backup face covering. Not only do these kerchiefs satisfy several functions, but they look great too. Each set features illustrations celebrating icons of product design like the Omega Speedmaster, the Fender Stratocaster, or my favorite, of course, a classic GTI. Follow them on Instagram at CantonmentCo, that's CantonmentCo, or visit them at cantonment.co. And use the code STANDARDH in all caps, no spaces, for 20% off of absolutely everything in their online shop. Now let's get to the show. I first learned about Brew watches through Hodinkee, as many of you may have. Former podcast guest James Stacy always seems to know how to get my attention through his words and his photos, and his feature of Jonathan Ferrer's espresso machine-inspired chronograph was no exception. A chronograph that times an espresso shot? Now that's something you don't see every day. And same goes for the TV set shape of the Brew Metrics case. Definitely drawing from the 60s and 70s, this $395 chronograph and its vintage radio-inspired color palette is also nothing if not attention-grabbing. And all of this coming from the gentleman I'm speaking to as he sits in the driver's seat of his 2019 Aston Martin V8 Vantage. Jonathan is my kind of guy. He's an East Coaster with a history of riding bikes, listening to the likes of Nirvana and early 2000s pop punk, and he's been the one-man band behind Brew watches, that is, up until a week before recording this. I'm excited to share his story and certainly appreciate his candor when it comes to his approach to design and decision-making. I think you'll enjoy this one. I'm your host, Wesley Smith, and you're listening to the Standard H podcast. So you're in a car.
I figured it was appropriate for this conversation.
Well, it is appropriate, and I'm sure, and the acoustics are amazing.
Yeah, whether it's like lighting for a wrist shot or just like acoustics, we're good in here.
Yeah, right. It's like it's a perfect light box for watch shots for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thanks for being a part of the show. You're New York based, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes.
What's the story there? Are you from New York?
Originally from New Jersey. I would always go to New York just for business, travel, leisure. So like I would go there, Central Park, Fifth Avenue stores. But then I would always come back home in Jersey. Not far in Jersey, but, you know, it was a local trip.
So you're familiar with the PATH train?
Oh yeah. That's the train everybody would take when the NJ Transit train stops running.
Yeah. Yeah. Weekends, nights, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
That's funny. What did your parents do while you're growing up? Or what do they do now?
Yeah, my dad, he's a jeweler for Tiffany's.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's been doing it for 30 years. My mom was a school teacher, retired many years ago. He's still finishing up his last few years at Tiffany's, and he'll be retiring soon too. But even before him, his father and grandfather, they were jewelry designers for Cartier.
Wow. That's incredible. What kind of influence did they have on you, or if at all?
Oh, it's funny. I was always showed the work, like the typical lost wax process, making rings, sculpting them, making them, setting stones and such. And as
Yeah.
much as my father always showed me these either artifacts or what he was currently working on, he always followed up with, "Don't ever get into this. It's super labor intensive, and there's
Yeah.
no money. So I'm sending you to school."
Yeah, that's the apparel industry has very similar stories. Like if you want to make $1 million in apparel, you have to spend six is kind of the joke.
Yeah. The odds are totally against you.
Right, right.
It used to be.
That's hilarious.
Things have changed these days where it's like it's a completely new world for just meeting the market needs and building an audience. It's completely different in our favor now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Whenever somebody asks me, like, what advice do you have if, when starting a company, I'm like, go be famous doing something else or somehow find out a way to build an audience and then launch a company to sell that audience products. Like, that's just, it's foolproof at that point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
you know? So with Tiffany, obviously they've been in the news a bit lately. So your dad, he repairs jewelry, is that what you said? Or is he into the watch thing?
He'll do variations. He'll work on new stuff. So something that needs from a customer, a stone set, laser engraving, sized rings, bracelets, necklaces, all jewelry, no watches. So he'll do that. He'll also do like old stock, which is, let's just say a customer comes in, repair work or adjusting. He'll also do that. But what they really, I would say, utilize his skill set for is like setting stones.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like their moneymaker. Like they have these big precious stones. Because he has so much experience, they'll go to him and then he'll set the stone and he could send it to the next guy for polishing or hand engraving and such.
Nice. Is he into watches at all?
Funny enough, no. And it's crazy. The watch he bought in the 80s for $300. He got a 6263 Daytona Rolex.
Yeah.
And then he got for $300. And then when I started getting to watches like 10 years ago, I go, "Dad, that watch he got?" I'm like, "I don't want to ruin it for you, but I know I will. It's worth," back then it was like 40. Now it's like 60 to 80. I said, "It's worth a lot, Dad. It's special." He's like, "If I had known, I would have got a dozen of them." Needless to say, he likes watches, but in no way is he like a watch aficionado. He just likes your normal run of the mill nice watches.
Right. What was your first watch, personally?
Ooh. Oh, good question. I had my fossils, and I think one of my first watches, I had like a LCD fossil. I had like the flames that would come up and down. I think I got that in the middle school.
Yeah.
And then I had like those other, they would literally just be quartz. The brand was just blank brand and quartz. And I think my grandpa would give me these watches. Still have them. Nice and thin. And yeah, like your typical fossil quartz. Even had a couple Lego watches back in the day.
Cool.
It had no influence on me though. I'll tell you, it was cool, but it never triggered anything. It's strange. I think everybody always says, "Oh, when I was 6, I had a watch and I knew I was gonna be a watch." No, you're 6. The whole world is exciting to you.
Right.
For me, it was one of many cool things, and in no way did I know when I was a little kid that there was a hook from watches.
Right, right. Yeah, I must admit I was the exact same way. Like I've always had a watch, but I was never like cognizant of the mayhem that I would get myself into later.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And a very valid point, I would say. 6-year-old being just enthralled by everything. What was like? What were coming through the speakers back then? Like, what were you into music wise in high school?
Oh God, high school was like Nirvana, Blink 182, Incubus, um,
Sick.
yeah, Panic at the Disco, like everything. And back then it's like CD players. So you just have your stack of CDs. And then you would also burn from LimeWire and all these different things to your CDs. And then you played in your car. It was fun. I wish I still
Yeah.
had some more CDs.
Yeah, quick story. So I was working in Malibu a little over 10 years ago, and from time to time I would meet musicians and such. And I was helping this one guy, and when I was checking him out at the cash wrap or whatever, I I don't know what gave me the courage, but I was just kind of like, "Has anybody ever told you you kind of look famous?" And he's like, "Yeah, who you got?" And I was like, "You kind of look like Jose, the drummer from Incubus." And he goes, "Oh, that's funny." And I was like, "Yeah, obviously your name's not Jose, is it?" And he goes, "No." He's like, "No, but that is funny because I'm the drummer for Rage Against the Machine."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "Oh my God, dude." He's like, "Hey, I'm Brad Wilk." And I'm like, "I'm so sorry, man." He's like, "No, man, I've actually gotten that before." And I was like, "No, it's just like I'm actually a drummer." And he goes, "Well, then you should know who I am, dude."
Now he's
But
messing with you.
but like back in the day, like Rage Against the Machine, like they didn't take photos, right? Like, I mean, you kind of know who Tom Morello is. He's bald, he's kind of forward facing, and obviously Zach, the lead singer. But like, there were never like complete band photos readily available. They always just had like the imagery of like Che Guevara or like whoever. But so
Yeah, you had MTV if they were that big on the TV, or you'd have like the album covers with some like images of the guys, but still, it wasn't like today.
right, right, no, exactly. But he was rad. So we ended up just like talking about drums and stuff for like 15 minutes. He's super cool.
Wow, that's cool. He gave you his time to just like hang out a bit.
Yeah, yeah, no, it was super fun. What were some of the hobbies you had in high school? Like, what were you up to outside of school?
Oh, I was on my bike all the time, digging jumps. So we would literally just dig holes as deep as we could, jumps that were like 3 times the height of us. They would just go straight up. And so I was constantly outside in the woods building jumps and just riding these every single day at my buddies. And
So this is a BMX bike?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we'd be like $3 in our pocket and we'd know where all the cheap vending machines were. We get like a bag of chips and you're just out from morning to night, just on your bike with your buddies. That was it.
That's sick. What were you riding? What kind of bike was it?
Um, so the early days were like the dynos. That's like middle school, high school.
Yeah.
When we got a little bit more serious, I think it was called FIT, Fit bikes.
Okay.
And it was all about the materials. So like magnesium pedals, aluminum frames, bored out in certain areas, but not weak.
Right.
Yes. And even the style is like tight pants. So it wouldn't get caught in your chain, but it was like almost punk style. I mean, these guys were serious. It was good times.
It sounds like kind of early emo days.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right about there.
Maybe some Taking Back Sunday in there.
Yeah.
That's
That's when we
awesome.
had the headphones with wires that would tuck underneath your shirt and then in your
Yeah.
pocket.
Yeah, totally. The iPod Nano, probably.
Oh no, even before that, it was just those generic MP3 players.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And you'd
yeah.
have to put them on hold so you don't accidentally bump a button.
That's amazing. Well, if I'm not mistaken, you're also a graduate of New Jersey Institute of Technology, correct?
Yes.
What made you decide to go there? Did you apply anywhere else?
I didn't know too much about school and I applied to maybe 2 places, more just to please my parents.
Right.
Again, I would still just ride my bike. All I cared about was just enjoying my time. No way did I want to um, do more school. It just wasn't interesting. So I said, all right, what do I like? Art. All right, I'll apply for architecture. I was like a C student. And when I got accepted to NJIT, it was more or less we have a new program for industrial design. We know you applied for architecture, you didn't get that. If you're interested, you can be one of the first people to try our industrial design program. So
Cool.
me and my mom are over there like bawling our eyes out. Oh, you actually got into school. Great. And it went from hardly able to get into college to them reaching out to me as like, would you like to teach? And then I was like top of my class. And I made the most of it, I'd say.
Wow. That's incredible. You know, I meant to ask you, did you work at all in high school? Did you ever have a job in high
Oh,
school?
all the time. Yeah, my parents, they're real strict. If you're not working, there's a problem. If you come up and downstairs without like a box in your hand of something, there's a problem. So uh, I helped my brother with a lawn care business when we were like 12, 13 years old. I worked at Panera Bread. I worked at, you know, ice cream shops. What did I do? I was pushing carts. I did all your typical jobs. There was no, you weren't allowed to sit around and do nothing.
Right, right. So after college, though, you got out. What was the first gig after college?
Junior year, I didn't even finish college. Junior year, I had an internship at Movado.
Oh, amazing.
So that was great. I got lucky working for them because working for Movado was like the most professional experience for anyone at my age. And it was good because they gave me access to working with their vendors, creating like the spec sheets for how the samples and eventual production would be. And then,
Oh,
like the simple mood boards and such. So it was good exposure for me.
yeah, that's insane. What led you to Movado, or was there like a job board at school or something? Like, how'd you land there? Even from an application standpoint.
Totally, it was just like on a whim. And again, I wasn't even interested. Like, I still wasn't a watch person at all.
Huh.
To be frank, I was in school and I said, wow, any opportunity is a good one. It could have been toy designer for Toys R Us at the time. I said, hey, this is great.
Right.
But the issue was they wanted somebody that had watch experience, which is funny for an intern, because there's other schools that have watch design courses
Uh-huh.
that are local. So I kind of lied and I saw that they had this opportunity and I spent like a day just dishing out watch designs, just illustrations, 3D models. I was in school, I could do it. And I basically said, like, here's my portfolio of all the watches that I've done. And I was like, shoot, like it worked. Like they bit. And they said, hey, we see your interest and we love your skill set. And if you want to learn more, you can join us. I was like, all right, perfect.
That's amazing. So between Movado and starting Brew, did you have any other jobs, or is that kind of
Oh yeah. Oh, I was in
linear?
hustle mode. So Movado was only 6 months. After that, finished up school and I started working as a essentially a licensed mass market watch designer. You ever go to like JC Penney's and there's like all these different random generic brands, Hello Kitty, like a Space Jam, or like Coleman Outdoors, Jessica Simpson, Crayola, Under Armour, like you name it. There was me, and I would create the brief. Like I'd get the overview, be like, all right, Under Armour, what does Under Armour stand for? And then I'd create that brief. I'd find materials. I'd design the watch. I'd work with Asia 99% of the time. And I would create the samples. And then I'd go to the Under Armour licensor, the person that gives you access to make this. I said,
Sure.
here's my designs. And they'd give it the thumbs up or down. And then we would go to a Nordstrom, so to speak, or a JCPenney. Excuse me. So sorry. And they make a purchase order. They'd say, oh, we'll take 1,000, we'll take 10,000, and these color choices. So then I understood not just design, selling, but what actually sells. Because the Nordstrom buyer would say, well, gunmetal sells really good this time of the year. Or, these are the specs size wise that are selling in our stores on the East Coast. So tailor it down a bit, and then we'll make an order.
Wow. So was that a challenge at all for you then, or were because I mean, on one hand you're creating stuff creatively, right? But then on the other, they're kind of telling you what to do, right? So
Oh,
like
absolutely.
that's kind of a fine line. So how did that feel to do business that way?
It's great because they give you what's essentially called design guidelines,
Hmm.
essentially how to use their logo, only colors that they'll accept,
Right.
and price ranges that you have to work within. So those constraints were essentially it. And for me, I understood manufacturing, but not to the extent that I do now. But I knew if I had to make a watch at cost of, I don't know, $30, I knew I could go only so far. And if I didn't understand, I was directly on the line with Asia. And they would say, hey, Jonathan, on a very personal note, great designs, but these screws, you can't use it. The case back, this won't work. X, Y, and Z. You can't do steel. You have to do an alloy. And so all these projects, I was learning what was possible and what wasn't.
Yeah.
And I did this for a year and a half. And then the story of where the next stage that changed my life was with my girlfriend walking through Soho, New York, watch store, right? What do you do with your girl? You drag her in. Say, hey, just want to look at this real quick. And it was just a little boutique, generic watch store, cool look. And the owner was in there. I said, hey, it's cool. And I love talking about watches. I love your watches. These are great. And can you tell me about them? He tells me, and he says, why are you so interested? I said, actually, I work on some watch designs, nothing at this level. These are really nice. He goes, I'm looking for a watch designer. Would you be interested? And he got me excited because I think I was like 22 years old at the time.
Right.
22-year-old kid walking in the store, and he says, I don't have a lot of money. I'll pay you a little bit, but for the most part, I'll fly you out to Basel, Switzerland shows. I'll fly out to Japan, China, Switzerland. I'll take you to all these places and introduce you to all my vendors, as well as the watch industry, like head honchos. I learned so much in 2 years. I also built this guy's brand. Dude, it was so crazy to the point where this guy was also trying to hustle. He's like, John, can you like Photoshop us press passes to get into the press lounge of Basel World? So like it's far. Basel World doesn't exist anymore. So I could say like I Photoshopped like fake documents to get us up there. And I was meeting with like Joe Thompson. I think at the time he worked for like Watch Time. And what I knew what I was doing. I knew I was going to help him, but I knew eventually I would merge out and do my own thing. So I made sure that everyone knew like, hey, my name is Jonathan, and I'm interested in watch design. I even met Jack Forrester on this trip, and we were at like the Three Kings. It's like a famous bar out there. And I said, hey, Jack. And I forget where Jack was. He was definitely not at Hodinkee. And I said, just making face-to-face intros like that, I ended up following up with these guys like 5+ years later, like, hey, I have my own thing now. If you have any interest in sharing this or taking a closer look, it was great meeting you at these shows in the past. And so, yeah.
That's amazing.
I was lucky.
That's incredible. So when you launched Brew, I believe it was 2015 is when you guys,
yes.
Yeah. So what, can you walk us through sort of like what that impetus was, or like what made you take the leap kind of thing?
So that was 2 years working for this boutique brand. And I saw a lot of his failures. So the reason that I wanted to do my own thing was for two main reasons. I saw all the bottlenecks and failures of his company and others. And then I also had this desire to do something more personal for myself, like self-expression, right? I had zero business knowledge. I didn't understand really how to operate any business. I didn't understand marketing that well. But I knew I just wanted just an out, a way to express myself. So before leaving him, I said, do you mind if I keep all your same manufacturers and XYZ? And he essentially said, good luck, because this guy was like $500,000 in debt, and he had all the money in the world, and he lost the game, so to speak. So when I said that to him, he said, yeah, go for it. So I did a Kickstarter, and it was in 2015. I look at it now, super amateur hour. I took all my own photos. I wrote my own story. It was honest and from the heart. And like any startup, it's who supports you, your friends and family, right? It's not real, but it is. And it's crazy. I didn't expect it to work, and I never expected it to be a business. I think I only thought 2 steps ahead of, I make something and share it, and I will feel relief, so to speak. I will feel like like fulfilled. But then it started to snowball where people were saying, "Well, this is great, Jonathan. What's next?" And I said to myself, "Oh shit, man! I never thought I had to create an extension from this. I thought this was just my one shot of expression." And like any business, you have your ebbs and flows. First year broke even. That was like interesting, right? I think I made like 90K and it cost me like 90K to get there, right? Like you said with the t-shirts, it's like it costs a fortune to just stay above water.
Right.
And then the biggest mistake I learned was not having a line extension or an evolved model quick enough. Watches, they take about a year from the moment that you say, these are my specs, getting a sample and then production takes about a year.
Okay.
So I said, oh, shoot, I was really in the red because all that time that goes by that you don't make money, you're essentially losing money. So then I learned, and it was like, first year, great. Second year, static. Third year, launched a watch. It sold very, very slow. Even my parents, I was still living at home in my bedroom at the time. Everything was out of my bedroom. And third year, my parents were saying, like, you should really apply for like a job. I applied to Fossil. I met with these two headhunters. I applied to Fossil and they said, why do you want to work here? I said, I did my own thing, self-expression. I've worked for other watch companies. And I remember they were so insulting to me. They said, why do you think you just, I asked for 75K. 75K. And they laughed me out of the room. They said, what makes you think you're worth 75K? I said, I have all this experience. They said, yes, but you're still so young. I said, okay. And they laughed me out of the room. They wouldn't even take the same elevator with me. Okay. So even my parents were like, you're in the red, Jonathan, get a real job still. And then I said, okay, I just want to do one last hoorah. And I launched this new chronograph.
Yeah.
And in 1 month, it did over 100K worth of sales.
Wow.
And so that did incredible. And then it continued to exponentially grow from there. And then it was, what was it? I think it was year 6 that I started doing like 7 figures. And then it started going like, now we're in year 7. So it's like, it's been multiplying ever since. But it's like the difference between the people that make it or don't make it, I would assume, is when you get to those critical points of nearly failing and you say to yourself, should I throw in the towel or continue? But you have to be so strategic. Time is of the essence, money. And then like, does it actually make sense? Or are you just beating a dead horse,
Yeah, there's so much there to unpack. First of all, like the creative outlet part of it that you mentioned, like I jokingly call it my creative vomit. Like I just, how sometimes, you've had a little bit too much to drink maybe. And, if I throw up, I'll feel better. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like that, but for creativity for me. So like I've designed stuff and had stuff made just to get it out of my brain. Like I can't let this stuff fester and exist in my brain. Like it has to become like a physical object for me for some reason. I don't know why, but, so I totally understand what you mean. As far as the Kickstarter is concerned, I am curious, like what was sort of the elevator speech at the time? Like what was the story?
Yeah, it was an honest story where when I worked for these other companies, I worked at the cafe. I enjoyed it. I said, Brew Watches is all about enjoying and savoring your time over a simple coffee, whether by yourself or with friends, loved ones, whoever it is. It's just about enjoying your time with subtle inspiration from espresso machines embedded into the watches. And that was it. It was so simple. It was, I would say, a little too poetic. If you didn't know me and you're just random Bob, you'd be like, nice story. It's all right. But what actually like the hook was the visual. Oh, this has like a cool vintage aesthetic with subtle espresso coffee details. Okay, I can get that. I could dig that. And that was enough.
That's awesome, man. So like, how did you said you didn't know anything about running a business and or marketing. So how were you marketing that first piece?
Oh gosh, that was all word of mouth. I was literally going on like Vistaprint, getting the most affordable postcards. And I was going to cafe in New York City, hoping that word of mouth, whether the cafe owners would buy it as gifts, share it with their patrons. I didn't realize at the time, these guys are the hungriest trying to make, their own money to sustain their own business. These are coffee shops. They're making, ends meet. It's not like the most lucrative business. Also, baristas, not the most lucrative business. So although it was on brand for Brew, that wasn't my target audience. They would buy, but not as easily as others. So who were those others? And I learned it was people that were design savvy, people that go to the museum, young professionals working in the city. And then that actually led me to go meet these watch enthusiasts in the city. They could buy my watch. Not that I was trying to sell it to them. I just wanted opinions, but it was an impulse buy. They would say my watches were too cheap, charge more. Mm-hmm. So the counter to that was these baristas are like, can I pay you in 5 payments? I said, wait a minute, this is not sustainable. I can't reach out to a market that can't afford the product.
Right.
So what's that middle zone like?
So how do you target the people now?
So everything I do now, it's visual. Like, okay, the story and branding, it's always visual. It's always the photographs I take, or now I contract photographers to help me to tell that story of enjoying your time over coffee. But do it in like a professional, classic way. I don't like contrived or forced images, like a cup of coffee and a watch. You have to do it in a classic, kind of like a Mr. Porter, clean, classic way. And that's the visual I like to tell. But on like the real back end, I learned, again, no marketing background. I learned a lot about the analytics, how to read analytics, click-throughs, where these websites taking people. Are people clicking on my website? Are they clicking off? How long are they on my site? Why do they click off? Track their cookies. Are they clicking to a review? Or are they just going to another watch brand? If so, why? And then you play detective, right? So you try to understand what are your audience members thinking as they're going through the purchase channel, so to speak. And so I say to myself, okay, well, if they're clicking off, maybe you need more credibility. Maybe you need more watch reviews. Maybe they can't handle in person to get a good feel for it. Maybe you should have a pop-up show to give that physical engagement with the product.
Sure.
So it was a lot of trial and error to get that honed in just right.
What software do you use to track those analytics?
Oh, just the back end of like a simple Squarespace and Google Analytics.
Gotcha. Cool.
It gives you enough from like geography to important pages to like websites they came from, they click to, and then it's just basic information. And it's really your duty to decide what you want to do with that information.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Well, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the design. You spoke about the new chronograph, which I love personally. There's a lot of depth to the dial between like the markers and the subdials and things of that nature. To speak also in kind of to couple that with like a manufacturing type of question, do you get all these bits and bobs from different manufacturers, or are they all kind of coming from the same place? Because my t-shirts, for example, have like my neck labels come from one vendor and the fabric comes from a different vendor and things like that. Is it similar with your dials and cases and such?
Yeah, there's a different vendor for each part. And that's because in the beginning, one of the failures I made, I had one guy do it all.
Right.
Not cost effective. They're going to charge you a premium without you even realizing it.
Sure.
So over time, I said to myself, why is the printing bad on the dials? Why are the hands not aligned correctly? So I found a separate dial, hand, case, manufacturer, also even down to the packaging. I separated them. And although it's, I guess, technically more complicated, it gives me better oversight on costs, timelines, also quality. Because if anything goes wrong, I've got the hand factory. Like this is your forte, guys. You need to remake this. If I go to the guy that handles everything, and I say, hey, the hands are not right, it's just an extra step, and he might even charge me for his time. It's a nightmare. So that was a trick I learned, and I was also told by a mentor, separate your vendors, and that's your best bet. Also, if you have to remove one, let's say your dial guy's no good, it's just one part you pull from the line, and then you just find a new one and insert it. It's much safer than being held up with one person that controls the whole operation.
Sure. Who's your mentor?
So that was a close friend that I actually used to work with. Remember, I told you I was working at like those mass market watches for like J.C. Penney and Nordstrom.
Sure.
And this was actually a manufacturer that worked in Asia. So they have offices in Hong Kong. And they were kind of like my go-to. And they keep it frank with me. They'd be like, Jonathan, you're an average American young boy coming in. They're gonna rip you a new one on pricing, quality. They're gonna take you for everything.
Right.
These are the things that you need to know. And if you get any messages that you're suspicious of or you're skeptical, send it to me. I'll confirm it with my people and you can move ahead. So I kind of had support from all around the world.
What was something that he said that, like, if they're gonna like rake you over the coals, like what was something that they would have done that with?
Oh, of course, pricing. Because when you come into the watch industry, you're new, you have zero credibility, and they don't know if you're going to do a one production run and take off. The most important thing is that they realize you're in the business for the long run. You get better pricing that way.
Right.
So when you come in fresh, they're going to give you an absolute premium. And that's because they don't know if you're going to make more with them. You could lie through your nose, but they still don't trust you.
Right.
So when I come through and I say, hey, I'm working with John Smith over here, they're going to say, oh, we've been working with him for the past 30 years. You're good. You're good. So I have the same amount of credibility as the person that's been working with them for decades. And then they'll treat me different in terms of price fairness, quality, and overall communication. Communication's the biggest.
Yeah, for sure. That chronograph you released is called the Metric. How did it get its name?
So that watch has a lot of measuring increments on it. And I was saying to myself, the name came after the design. I said to myself, this is all about timing an espresso shot. So that's your 25 to 35 seconds. The markers I put on the 9 o'clock subdial, I believe it's every 10-minute increments. I did that naturally. It's from vintage watches. But more importantly, I had older folks that said, hey, John, your past chronographs are just lines. I can't tell what minute marker it's on. Could you just make that a little bit more clear? So that's why I integrated those 10-minute segments on the subdial. And then the more I realized it, the more I was like, wow, this watch is kind of like a measuring device, not just for time, but like measuring elapsed time. So I said, all right, it's like a measuring tool. What is a measuring tool? It's like some type of metric. But of course, I went through every other terrible name to get to that tool measuring idea.
Right. The thesaurus was out.
Oh my God, terrible. And naming stuff because you want it to be neutral enough that the average person can pick it up and put their own perspective on it, their own interpretation. And it's not going to be misleading. It's not going to disgust them or make them feel odd. Like if I called it the Ladybug watch, they'd be like, it feels like feminine or weird. You can really turn a person off or on with a simple name. And I said, this is like the perfect, safe, conservative, defined name that really represents the watch in a nice way that's memorable. Perfect. It's quick. It's sharp. You could say it real quick. You could spell great. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's phonetic, all that good stuff. Yeah. That's cool. Why that size? It's 36 millimeters.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God.
Was that is that movement related at all, or is it just?
No, that was just the overall dimension that I said to myself. Watches for myself are more comfortable when they're smaller. I also see trending watches getting smaller.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think big watches are going to be the thing for the next 10 years. It's just everything is about like comfort, convenience, and then also harping back to older pieces, especially for my brand. I like to have that vintage nostalgic effect on the designs. So I said, all right, if you're going to even stick with that vintage aesthetic, well, the dimensions really speak to that the best.
Yeah,
Also, realistically, it does open it up to more people wearability. If you have like
sure.
a large Breitling, you've just outcasted so many people that could have purchased it.
Yeah, totally. Can you describe the Mecca Quartz movement that it's got?
Yeah, so the metric has the VK68 movement. It actually has a 3 o'clock 24-hour timer, but I removed that. It goes to that. So the Mecca Quartz essentially is run by a battery at a high frequency. So you'll see that the main sweeping chrono has a nice, smooth sweeping seconds. But then when you stop it, it snaps back. That chronograph function and that snapback motion, that's all characteristic from its mechanical side, which is the mechanical part from the Mecca Quartz.
Hmm.
So there's a little clutch that drives the mechanics that snaps it back. That's all mechanical, but the rest of the watch for time telling is all battery operated. So then you have the perk of just accuracy, pick it up and run with it.
Right. The case design is somewhat that, TV set, right? The 70s television. Was that something that you just loved? I know, like, for example, like the perpetual calendar chronographs from Patek, like there was only the one that was kind of that 70s TV set that is extremely rare, I guess, by all accounts these days to come across. But what was the design philosophy and or draw to that shape?
Yeah, I always like to stand out and be different, but not just for the sake of being different. I realized something that I started out with. When I came out of the gates in 2015, I also had a cushion style case.
Mm-hmm.
And then something I realized early on is like recognizable brand DNA. So dumbing it down, it's like being the square cushion design brand
Right.
and sticking with that. Now, it's difficult because most people don't wear square watches. You could say, well, everyone has an Apple Watch. It's different from mechanical or fashion watches. Most people wear typically round watches. It's just what they're familiar with, and people buy what they're familiar with. It's less intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
But I said to myself, if I can stay in this square case silhouette game long enough, I can build a DNA that is distinctive, that people desire, and um, it could be something that can just be so unique amongst the other watches. Yet the best part is, I figured this out through like my second watch. If I stay with this vintage-esque style, then it's appropriate. You notice if you stay anywhere from like 60s to 70s watches, they all have that TV style. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, this is perfect. So it makes sense um, to be different, to be recognizable. It makes sense for the era that I'm working to harp on. And yeah, that was the most important thing, was to be different, but not just for the sake of being different. But it's difficult because again, most people wear round watches because it's what they're comfortable with. But
Sure.
it takes time.
So regarding the thickness, this chronograph's 10.75 mm. Now, obviously, that's going to be attributed to the movement thinness, I guess, as opposed to thickness in this case. Now, was that a goal of yours to keep the watch thin? So I guess, did the design stem from the movement or did the movement stem from the design?
Um, I knew I wanted a chronograph movement. Now the options are always mechanical, like manual, automatic, or quartz. And the Mecca quartz is perfect because of two main factors: thinness and cost. If I
Mm-hmm.
was to do this with a mechanical movement, some people ask, then instead of 395, the cost would be probably around 2,500 at least
Right.
to like survive long term.
And you'd have what, like a Valjoux 7750 or?
Yeah, Valjoux, you could do Solita has some hand wound movements as well. I think they're like SW 510.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're beautiful, but the other, like there's another third part to that, which is quartz versus mechanical. Mechanical and automatic watches are more troublesome in the long term. They
Mhm.
require more maintenance. They're a little bit more fragile. So as a watch brand, my most important, from a business perspective and from a pride perspective is put out a watch that will last a long time, that you're not going to have to worry about servicing frequently. That's just, I don't think that's good business. And there are watch brands that do it. It's part of their business, but it's not a good startup business. I'm not in the repair business. We have
Right.
it available, but the returns and repairs, it's more troublesome. And if you can avoid that and make a great product just the same, then that's actually where the Mecca Quartz came in.
Sure. You mentioned earlier having kind of design parameters to stay within, guidelines and such. What role did color play for you? Because, the metric it's got two variants, right? There's one that's a little more subtle, subdued with the steel dial. And then the other one's far more vibrant, let's say. What kind of parameters did you put on yourself, if any, when approaching color?
Yeah, it's something that it has to have an intelligence to it. So I was literally searching 60s, 70s radios, industrial design radios and products from the past. And you get these baby blues, these mint greens. You see it on their irons. You see it on their typical products of that era.
Sure.
So it was a matter of finding the right colors that would work together, also
Hmm.
functionally. Because when you look at your watch, you want to have a clear visual understanding of the time that's being told.
Yeah, the legibility.
Yeah, but I'll tell you the funniest part is sometimes I get, I wouldn't say scared, but so there's part of me that's designer, then there's part of me that's businessman. I honestly thought people were going to be afraid of the color and they were going to buy
Mm.
the silver steel watch. So I actually made more of the steel at the time. I had no idea that people were going to be so brave and buy the color. Not only just buy it, but like demand it. And it sold out so fast. I said to myself, "Oh my God, who could ever guess that people would be so brave?" But that spoke such loud words about what people were interested in. And it was just that they want a fun watch that they can enjoy. They don't really care about your safe standard black and white watch anymore. They want something that's different and unique, and it works well. It was balanced. But I didn't think people would be that brave.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. Yes, you can call it brave, I guess, but I think it's also just if you're going to be different by way of TV set design, for example, cushion case, and yeah, why not go nuts with color to boot? Because it's like you go big or go home at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like that from your BMX days. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah, you got to commit.
yeah, yeah, huck it. Like let's
Yeah.
just do it. So I think it's cool, man. I mean, I definitely think the colored variant is my favorite. Even and look at me, I'm in gray and black. Like, I mean, this is what you see is what you get. With me usually for that. But then again, that's also why I like colors on watches from time to time because I like statement pieces, right? Like, so it's either your watch or your shoes or what have you. So I think it's brilliant. How did you land on the price? I mean, aside from just like standard markup procedure, like what did price mean to you?
It was a mix of standard markup. People are very proud sometimes. They say, "Well, charge for your time designing and thoughtfulness."
Yeah.
And I still don't pat myself on the back just yet as a designer. Yeah, there's an absolute ton of time that goes into research development, X, Y, and Z. But I charge with a few things in mind. What would I personally be comfortable in spending
Hmm.
without being intimidated? Because there's that line of being intimidated. And realistically, that's your abandoned checkout right there. You're going to take it in the cart. You're going to go, do I really want to spend $1,600 on this quartz chronograph right now?
Right.
Then you're gonna compare apples to apples. This doesn't make sense. There's going to be the emotional value, but there's a cap on that, right? So how how far is that cap, and what's that balance of comfort? And then also, where do you find the balance of value proposition? Are people getting the best watch for this price point? I honestly think they're getting a lot more watch for the price. I know I can charge a lot more, But for me, even though it's year 7, I still treat this as a startup. The more people that are wearing my watches and buying it and sharing it, the better it is for the long run. And that's where I'm aiming for the long run. So if I charge a super attainable price, which is where it is now, well, more people will be wearing it and sharing it. And it's a big world. The more people that are enjoying this, they just need to have a taste. They will come back and they will be interested to listen and hear more about the future of Brew watch designs.
Yeah.
My mission is to always create that a bit of attainability to keep people in the circle. Now, that's a super affordable watch. I do want to create more high-end luxury pieces, everything from the movement to the design and how it's made, where it's made, X, Y, and Z. I think it's just a track record of creating something unique that people love, that feel like they got something special. Especially these days, the demand is so high and nobody can keep up production wise.
Right.
I think it's a good long-term vision to create that attainability. Now, I mean, it's not for every business. Some are the complete opposite. Some people would say charge an absolute fortune. You'll create that value proposition. I don't. I try to keep it fair and give everyone a taste so that they really see the capabilities of what I can put out.
Yeah, 100%. You've got quite a bit of Hodinkee coverage this year, I noticed, which is fabulous. Congratulations. Their audience is obviously huge. How did some of that come about? I'm only curious because it seems James, who's been on this show and has become, a bit of a friend, great guy. He seems to be the go-to guy to write about you. So are you guys pretty tight, or is that just coincidental, or?
It was a coincidental because I
Yeah.
think James at the time was handling most of their editorial uh, write-ups at the time.
Okay.
And so James, he essentially came to me and said, "Hey, John, I'm the guy for the job. We heard about your new watch coming out. Essentially, can you tell me a little bit about this?" I wish it was like beers and hanging out, but he's out in Canada, so we never really had that relationship.
Yeah.
But I think this was a good opportunity just to kind of break the ice, get to know each other a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was definitely like the first real year of being covered by Hodinkee, which was nice. It's interesting, right? You have the bubble of like watch enthusiasts, and for me, the most successful, I guess, notion is when we get outside of that bubble. So I love when watch enthusiasts share it, but for me, it's introducing people that would never even think about checking out watches before this.
Totally.
So I think the biggest success for Brew is bringing new people into this watch atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be the pattern that happens. And it's interesting because they never just buy one watch. They seem to collect all of them. And so something I've also learned is that Brew is essentially becoming like a collectible brand. It's affordable, sure, but I don't make a million of them. And I think they realize it. I think they realize it's coming from my hands, that there's something unique and special here. And I don't even think they think, hey, it'll be worth something one day. I think it's just to be part of like a special design movement of this special era of micro brands.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said there for even Standard H, because like when people buy my t-shirts, like they know that I'm the one packing the boxes. They know that I'm the one writing that handwritten thank you note, that whole deal, which I'm sure you can identify with. Are you still a one-man band primarily? I know your mom was helping early days, but what's the team size like now?
So it's been a one-man band for 7 years. And then just last week, I hired somebody full-time
Sick.
to help me with communications. It's just there's incredible amount of people reaching out. So I just hired somebody full-time to help me with that.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
Thanks.
It's a scary time because it's like, oh God, now I'm responsible for somebody else as well.
Yeah, like quite literally. And whether that person moves to be closer to the office, I just opened an office too. You, you do feel that responsibility, but it's like a good fire underneath you to say like, all right, now I need to push that much harder to succeed, not just for myself, but for this person as well. And that, I mean, it's natural growth, I guess, you know, whether it's the watch business or apparel or whatever it is, it seems to be the natural pattern that happens.
Yeah, totally. Let's talk cars here. You're sitting recording this in an Aston Martin Vantage. Is this the 8-cylinder?
Yes.
What year's the car?
2019.
And the outside color is dark, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's all black.
Oh, black on black.
And then black on black. Yep, yep.
Nice, man. Are you enjoying it?
It's an aggressive car. I love it to death. It's an aggressive car. It is fast.
Okay, so I'm a huge Aston exhaust note fan. I think they just sound incredible.
Yeah.
What was the first car you ever had?
I had a Mustang GT.
Oh, okay.
I won it for free in a raffle.
What? So let me get this straight. Cars fall in your lap, jobs fall in your lap.
Put out good, you get good.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. So where'd you go from the Mustang GT?
I sold that and I got a Honda S2000.
Did you like chip it and do the whole deal? Because that was a really fast car.
It was fast. I never did anything to modify it.
Okay.
But I put it back to stock because stock, it felt so tight on the road. It was good.
Cool. So what led you to Aston? Because I mean, that's definitely, it's I don't know how to describe this. I mean, aside from like, the connection to James Bond and such, it's such a understated classic sports car.
Yeah, Aston Martin's a scary car to even get into, especially like the newer ones cost wise, because one, value proposition, you want to talk about that. They've all plummeted, right? Now the market's changing, but they plummeted. A car that was worth 120 drops to like 40K
right
in a matter of years. That was scary. They would also be prone to breaking down, high maintenance costs. Like, why would you ever want to put yourself in that position?
Right.
The car I had before this. So realistically, before Brew, I lived at home. I lived in, my parents had a room for me. I had $1,500 to start Brew. So I had no money. I lived at home. I started Brew. I started making a little bit of money, spending money. But again, I had no actual funds. It was kind of like the story of selling a paperclip to get a book and a book to get a chair. And so it was literally like starting from nothing. Like I had a good home, but I had no money.
Right.
Incrementally over the years, I became so money savvy with where I would put it for the business that I started doing better and better and better. My first like real treat to myself was a Porsche 911.
Okay.
Minty one. It was a 2004. It was an older one. Yeah. But it was like a minty black one. And I got that 1 year ago because I made sure like business was sound. I had everything checked out. Like I was good. I wasn't being irresponsible. Everything had its dues paid in for in advance.
So this was the last 996 or the first 997?
It was the 996 everyone's afraid of.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because they're afraid of the IMS bearing failing and then the engine failing.
Right.
But I put that car up I bought it 19,000 miles and I put it up to, I believe, around 35,000 miles. Never had any issues besides changing plugs and coil pack, doing the oil. That car was so good to me.
Sweet.
And it was a few months ago that the market was hot. It's all relative, but it was hot. So I said, you know what? It's a nice car. It's very tame. It's a 6-cylinder. You're not going to, blast off on this thing. So I wanted something a little bit more
punchy,
newer, punchy. Yes. And I said, all right, what are we looking at? Ferrari will kill me.
Financially.
Yeah, gosh. And Lamborghini, I don't want to say bad things about the owners, but it's a lot of those older men that just, it's flaunting, right? So I wanted something discreet, but also a monster. And so I landed on the Vantage. And this was it was a good point to get rid of the Porsche financially. So this made sense and there's absolutely no regret. And then I would say, to put this in context, I used to race Ducati super bikes. So
Oh,
like the
sick.
Panigales, when I had sold those, I felt like nothing can ever give me that same feeling. Porsche
Right.
won't come close. You're going like almost 200 miles an hour between one stoplight. It's like nothing can give you that thrill. The Vantage comes close.
Wow. So you've had a Panigale. Which one did you have?
I
Was
had
it?
the 1199
Yeah.
Panigale, and then I after that I got a V2. So they're both like the 1000 cc leader bike.
Did you have the Tricolore?
No, no, no. Those are
Okay.
nice. I didn't have that.
My buddy had the 1199 Tricolore, and it's just so beautiful. I mean, you can't mess with Ducati, man. I mean, they're just
Gorgeous
No.
bikes.
If you could park that in like your living room and just stare at it, like
100%.
you know, that's the
Yeah.
dream.
That would be a garage queen because I've never owned a motorcycle. I've always either dated and or married a woman that would be like, no bikes because
Yeah,
this
that's
This is really
normal.
relationship's over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. They want somebody that's going to be around for a little while.
Yeah. So what are you up to hobby wise these days? Like outside of cars and watches?
I'll tell you, I've never been busier in my life. So these days, it's really like wake up at 7 and for work, and then work doesn't shut off till like midnight. It's
Yeah.
really around the clock. It's hard to find time, and now I'm understanding the whole entrepreneurial like go to the gym to clear your mind.
Right.
Um, so the car for me is my one outlet right now. I have my girlfriend. I love seeing her. So that gives me my emotional break as well. But the car is like the only outlet time wise away from work these days.
It's funny. I ride bicycles, not motorcycles, as I said. And I heard a quote recently that because I just got back into mountain bikes, and so I ride road and mountain now. And the quote was, "Ride road bikes to think about your problems, and ride mountain bikes to forget about them."
Oh, that's a good quote.
Which is so spot on because you just can't think about anything other than the moment when you're mountain biking. You know what I mean? You just have to constantly be paying attention to your environment, which I guess you could argue is like the epitome of a meditation, right? Like there's nothing more present than doing something like that. So,
Do you go
It's
often?
I don't ride. I actually, as of late, I have not been riding at all just because I've been so busy with work and it takes so much time. I mean, to really get out and get in a good ride, I mean, I want to be out for 3, 4 hours, like I don't want to be, it's not a 30-minute run. You know what I mean? So,
What kind of
um,
um
bike do you have?
mountain bike, I have a Trek Fuel EX 9.8, and then my road bike is a giant TCR Pro Disc Zero, I think is the trim. But both great bikes, love them to death. Um, bang for your buck on both Accords, I would say. Um, yeah, super fun for sure.
Awesome.
What do you have a Grail car, or are you sitting in it?
Sitting in it.
that's
You know,
amazing.
it's so strange. You want these things and then you finally get them, and there's part of you like, all right, I'm satisfied. And then the other human factor is like, all right, what's next? I can't think of a what's next right now, nor
Awesome.
should I. It's another like food for thought is like I like to think I'm simple, and my girlfriend always laughs at me when I say that because I'm like getting these things. Uh, when I get this, you do become a little numb to it, and I try to remind myself that you don't need these things,
Right.
but they're so nice. It's like a teeter totter. It's like you don't need this, you've done it, and I feel like part of me is trying to like get this out of my system while I'm young. But yeah, I'm trying to simplify my life. Not it doesn't really show at the moment, but I would like to eventually just yeah, simplify my life, enjoy my work. No need for ridiculous vehicles.
Well, at least you're simplifying it by way of not collecting cars and finding ways to store them, and you know what I mean. At least you just have the one. I'm assuming.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was actually thinking to myself, if I ever move away, I would definitely open up like an exotic car garage, and that would feed my uh, frenzy with other people's vehicles.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. No. 100%. Well, you mentioned your new office. What else is next for Brew? Where is the office, by the way?
So it's in Hoboken, New Jersey, actually.
Cool.
Great spot right next to the ferry to shoot into the city if I ever have other meetings out there.
Sure.
It's 1,000 square feet, huge space, and it's already filled up with just everything from shipping supplies and product.
Amazing.
Perfect picture would have a watchmaker in there a few times a week helping me with servicing, another person to help me with fulfillment. I do have to play catch up with design because it's been a busy year.
Yeah.
Like I said before, that will absolutely kill you if you don't keep up with like new variations.
Yeah.
And I feel, and I assume a lot of other business owners feel this way after doing it for some time, more confident to try new wild designs that might be straying from the norm pretty hardcore.
Sure.
But it's definitely like self-fulfillment, happiness, excitement. So I'm going to be trying a lot of new wicked things.
Can people drop by the office and check you out, or is it kind of closed to the public kind of thing? Or
close to the public right now. I'm like working on a security system for like cameras and sensors. Just sure. I want to make sure before the address is public that everything's locked up safely.
Totally.
Eventually, it's going to be like it's a huge space that we can have like a small group of folks by to check out the watches and talk shop.
Very cool. Now, do you collect other watches, or are you just rocking your own stuff?
That's a great question. What do I have? Yeah, I have other watches. I'm not a huge collector. I love shopping and getting so close to pulling the trigger and then not doing that. So, John, you got too many watches as it is. What do I look at typically? I like old vintage watches that have been like worn and torn and just absolutely beaten, like old solid gold Royal Oaks that the dials that used to be like a champagne color are turning like a brassy yellow. Those are pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
I look at those old Enicar, like where are they, Sherpas, where you see the font, the text that they use, real sharp, cool. They have like these lollipop hands on some of them.
Yeah, I think Eric Wind sells a few of those from time to time.
Oh, he's got such nice watches.
Yeah.
He does. So I like to watch from afar.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. Well, listen, just wrapping up, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's great to get the FaceTime as well, inside the Vantage, no less. Super cool. I'm flying to New York tonight, as a matter of fact. So maybe one of these times we could definitely meet up and grab an espresso. I'd love to.
Would love to. Yeah. Let me know. Let me know if you need anything like that here. Definitely.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Jonathan. This was super enjoyable for me. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, Wesley, dude, seriously, it means a lot to me. Good luck, and let me know when you get to New York if you need anything.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
All right,
bye.
Bye.
I'd like to thank Jonathan once again. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and absolutely looking forward to grabbing an espresso shot with you sometime in the city. Major thanks goes to Jensen Reed and Super Beautiful, as always, for providing the theme track, as well as to Clear Audio for the noise-canceling headphones. Stay tuned. In another 2 weeks, we'll be back with another show. Take care of yourselves and each other. Ciao.